This is Allison Thompson, Director at Marshall Public Library, representing the Friends of the Library's Oral History Project. This afternoon, I am speaking with Linda Broadhurst at Marshall Public Library on Thursday, August 27th, 2015. Thank you for coming today, Linda. I'd like to start out by asking you, where and when were you born?
I was born in Paris, Illinois, April 11th, 1940. They tell me it snowed that day. I lived in Marshall, though, but a lot of us went up to the hospital there in Paris.
So were you born at the hospital?
Yes.
Okay, because I hear many people say they were born in their homes.
Yes, no, I was at the hospital.
And so, how old are you today?
75.
And who were your parents?
Audrey and Benton Mars. They had the funeral home, Mars Funeral Home, and Mars Furniture Store here.
And where were those located?
402 Locust Street was the funeral home, and also on Locust Street was the furniture store on the south side of the courthouse. Did
you live at either of those locations?
I sure did. I lived above the funeral home for 18 years.
Tell me about that.
Well, if we were to have a party, everything was hinged on if we got a body or not.
Sure. Meaning someone died.
Yes. And but it was nice up there. It was lovely. I was the only child, and I was quiet. I guess that was a learned behavior, I suppose. And it was interesting because my job later on, as I grew older, I was to open the front door and greet everybody. And everybody knew who I was, but I didn't know who everybody else was. So I learned to say, "Hello, how are you? I haven't seen you in a long time."
And you did that all growing up then, I'm sure.
And after my mother died, she died at the age of 47, I lived in Paris at that time. And so I would come down and be my dad's rotarienne, and I would also help with the funerals until I got pregnant with my third child. And I couldn't look like I was pregnant and be in a business situation.
Interesting. Now tell me about that. Why is that? Because, I'm thinking it's 2015. That's kind of hard for me.
Well, that was a long time ago. My father was very conservative.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what memories really stand out about the funeral home to you?
Well, interesting enough, it was quite an interesting place to live because we had a lot of traffic, after they had because back then the funeral directors did the ambulance calls. And after maybe a call, they would come up and have coffee around the kitchen table, or after the funeral they would have coffee. And my dad was a jokester, and a lot of the guys that helped him were funny. It was interesting. And another thing that I did, I was a cheerleader in high school. So we used those big rooms when they weren't used downstairs as a practice place for our cheerleading.
Really?
Yeah.
So did any of your friends ever get scared going to the funeral home?
Well, I couldn't understand why anybody would, but that's because I was used to it. But no, not most of my little girlfriends. No. However, I had a slumber party one night. We were probably 14, 15. And I took them on a tour of the funeral home. We went through the embalming room. And, of course, we grabbed one of the gals. Her name was Ann Jensen. And pretended like we were going to put her on the embalming table.
Oh, goodness.
And then, being the young girls, we were out walking late at night and saw some boys. And, my mom had probably several gray hairs out of that.
And was this young lady traumatized after that?
No, she's fine.
So tell me about Mars Furniture.
Well, my dad, actually how that all started was my father and mother started out with absolutely nothing. And my dad, the reason he wanted to be a funeral director is he lived in Kansas, Illinois. And when he walked to school, he walked past the funeral home. And he would see these men all dressed very nice. And they had nice cars. And he wanted that. So he thought, that's the way I'll go.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he and my mother, they were 20 and 22 when they got married. And they didn't, by that time, Dad lived out, I don't know if you know the BB Crossroads, it's the Klein Archer. He lived the first house south. And my mother lived south of Kansas. Interesting enough, my son still lives there now.
In that same home?
In that same home, yeah. So anyway, they met at a dance and they got married, and their honeymoon was at Paris at another funeral director's home, and then they went to Chicago and bought embalming equipment.
So your mom was right on board.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she was very much so. They were both 75 in it. They borrowed money from an uncle in Arthur, Illinois. Greg Fitzgerald, I think was his name, Greg. And he had a furniture store, and he says, if you're going to have a funeral home, you have to have a furniture store. Therefore, that's why he ended up with a furniture store.
Now, why did he have to have a furniture store with the
Because
funeral home?
actually, I believe there were 4 funeral homes here in town when they decided to, and I think that helped them survive.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they did sell furniture, but, you know, in the funeral business, you get a family, and it takes a while for that to be integrated into the business.
So what kind of education did your mom and dad have to do the...
High school education on both of them. They were both real smart and a lot of good common sense. And then Dad had to go to Chicago to Worshams to the funeral director school.
Okay.
And he did that. And schooling was not his best ability, but he managed to get through and did very well. And with his good common sense, he really did very well.
Common sense goes a long way.
Yeah, I'd rather have that anytime. Yeah.
So you grew up in Marshall, and then you went to high school here. Did you?
Yes.
What schools did you go to?
I went to Southside School.
Okay.
And then junior high, we were all together, and high school. And then I went to Eastern for a little over a year. All I had on my mind was I wanted to get married and have 6 kids.
And did you have 6 kids?
No, I only had 3. But that was enough. I married Bill Burnside in 1959, June the 20th, 1959. And we moved to Decatur, where he was a bank teller. And we eventually had 3 children.
And what are their names?
Okay, my oldest, Belinda Cheryl Burnside. And how we got that name was we combined our names, Bill and Linda, Charles and Carol, because we couldn't come up with any other name.
That's neat.
Yeah. And then 4 years later, Bill came around. His name's William Benton Mars, which was my father's name, also William Benton. I mean, William Benton Burnside. And my dad's was William Benton Mars. And there's always a Bill Burnside in the Burnside family. And then 4 years after that, Tyler Thomas Burnside. Tyler was my mother's maiden name. Thomas was Bill's brother's name. So they all have kind of family names.
That's neat. I like that a lot.
I do too.
It makes it extra special.
It does. It does.
So, during Eastern, you got married and had 3 children. And then where did you move?
We moved to Decatur, where Bill was.
And how long did you stay in Decatur?
We stayed there, I would say about 7 years. At that time, Bill got his stockbroker's license and worked for Mid-America Stock and Bond, and it was a small town company at the time. And they hired him so that we could move back to Paris because Bill knew a lot of people in the area, and so they had a satellite office in Paris. So we lived there about 7 years, and then they sold the company, and we moved back to Decatur.
So, tell me what married life was like during those early years. What was it like financially, and how was it different than, people who are getting married these days?
For us, fortunately, it was pretty easy. We didn't have a lot of tough times.
Good.
Yeah. It was, having little kids is not the easiest thing in the world. But fortunately, they were 4 years apart, which helped.
So what was dating like when you were in high school and in college? How is that different?
I was a bit of a flit around with the boys. I probably went to 2 proms every year because I just didn't settle down. I just enjoyed that was a lot of fun. My freshman, sophomore year, junior year was a lot of fun. And then I got pinned and then engaged my senior year, so that slowed things down.
But then that's not who you married, correct?
Yeah, that was.
Oh, that is. Okay. Okay. So, did he go to Eastern as well?
Yes, he graduated from Eastern.
What did he graduate with?
A bachelor's degree in business.
And so, did you stay at home with your
Yes, I did.
small children?
I did.
And how long did you do that?
Oh, until they got to be, I can't even say, till they got older. Yeah.
And then what did you do?
And then I went to work. I worked in Decatur. I worked for Decatur Paint and Varnish. I was their decorator for a while. And I loved that job. That was fun.
It was fun.
So then after, I've been in Florida about 30 years. So when I moved down there, then I got my real estate license and did that.
Now, what part of Florida are you in now?
Clearwater.
Clearwater.
And I've always lived in that area.
It's a beautiful place.
Oh, I love it there.
Yeah.
I just love it.
It's a beautiful place. And do you currently work?
No.
No.
I'm 75, for Pete's sake.
Well, some people still like to work. Are there any historical events that stand out in your mind? For example, I remember what I was doing when 9/11 happened. Is there anything that really stands out in your mind that was significant in our history that you just really will never forget?
Oh, I was ironing when, and with TV on when Kennedy got shot. So I saw all that. I was driving up to Atlanta when 9/11 happened. And I turned around and went home.
Oh, yeah. Tell me, when Kennedy got shot, what was it like? What was your community like?
Well, it was just very sad, it was just unbelievably sad. Now we have something happening all the time. It's a hard time in the history right now. People getting killed, policemen getting killed. And that was something that we just weren't used to. Heartbreaking, really.
Technology has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Over the years. What are some big milestones that you remember in technology growing up?
Oh, gee. Well, when I first got my first cell phone, I think I had a battery in the trunk of the car and a big it was huge. We had to have a cell phone for the lock boxes on the houses that we were showing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was interesting. And I remember when I was in Decatur, I didn't have a garage door opener until I started coming home, and it was kind of dark, and I would have to click the garage door opener. So, I mean, I got a garage door opener, so I wouldn't have to.
Oh yeah, that's a big difference than having to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my mom making my brother get out and open the door.
Mm-hmm,
I do
mm-hmm.
remember that too. What are some of your favorite pastimes or leisure activities that you like to do?
I love to travel.
And where are some of the places you've traveled?
Just got back in May from a trip up the Danube. We went up. It was a riverboat tour.
Oh, fun.
And we were in Budapest and Vienna and a lot of the little countries along that way.
Neat.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening, because you know the communists have just, well, the wall came down 25 years ago, and all
Mhm.
these new little countries opened up,
Mm-hmm.
and the attitudes that they have.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting. I mean, we went into little towns that there would be a building that you could see had been bombed, or another building that had gun shots, holes in it, and down the street would be a new mall.
Hmm.
It was just bizarre.
Hmm.
And of course they're behind us in a lot of ways. It's like
Mhm.
1950s, something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What strikes you about their attitudes? You said their outlook is just different.
It's different. I think they have some angst, some anger
Mhm.
about all of what has happened.
Mhm.
And interesting to us, they're always fighting for little countries and little lands. I mean, that's their mindset.
Mhm.
And it's not so unusual for us. That is such a foreign
Mhm.
thought.
Mhm. Mhm. Where else have you traveled?
Let's see, I was in Costa Rica not too long ago. Went to a yoga retreat.
Oh.
No air conditioning. Bunch of us ladies. We had a lot of fun. See, I've been to Italy and France and just a lot of little other places.
And what's your favorite?
Oh, I love South France. But
Right.
Italy is wonderful. The food is, even the stops beside the road,
Mm-hmm.
the food is absolutely delicious.
Hmm.
It's interesting. I've been to
Mhm.
Spain and Portugal, England. I'd like to go to Scotland and Ireland. I'm Scotch-Irish, and I think that would be kind of
Mm-hmm.
nice to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's great. Good
Yeah.
for you.
Well, you got to keep healthy to do that. It's hard to travel.
Yeah. How do you think growing up in Marshall has helped shape you?
I think I grew up in the best of times,
Mm-hmm.
in the best place. It was like a non-eventful, other than your high school, So it was, a big thing would be on Saturday night racing down, racing your cars down the street on Main Street.
On Route 1?
No, here, Main Street.
Oh, Archer?
Yeah, on Archer. Well, it was a very grounded time. The 50s were great to grow up in.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Elvis doing his gyrations on Ed Sullivan for the first time.
Yes.
I loved my growing up. I wish my grandchildren had that, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I do bring one of my granddaughters up here in the summer, and so she can enjoy little town living.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned racing on Archer Avenue. What were the police and the teenagers like? What was their relationship?
I don't know. I never got into trouble.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't seem like there was really
No.
anybody getting in trouble.
I don't think there still is
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything that you want to share with me that we did not talk about?
Gee, I can't think. Well, I'm very proud of where I came from. I'm very proud of my parents. I think they did a wonderful job. They were pillars of the community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And still, people tell me how wonderful they were, and it makes me very happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I love my little hometown.
Well, I appreciate you meeting with me today, and I hope you have a safe trip back to Florida.
Oh, thank you.